So this is a review of the Monopoly project. I just want to go over a few of the transactions to show you how to get started completing this project. So if you look through the information that I've given you, you're going to see that on the second page you'll have the Monopoly transactions that you're going to be recording and posting. If you look at the next page, you'll see the Monopoly project chart of accounts. We'll use that as well for the ledger. Then we have the general journal pages. You have a couple of those sheets in here to be used. Then you have the general ledger pages. I believe I gave you 3 of those to use. And then we have the sheet that's going to be used for the trial balance. You can't type into this. You're going to have to actually handwrite this one. And then we have the income statement. So these are the forms you'll be using for the Monopoly project. So if you have those out and available, you can look through those as I'm going through the first few transactions. So we're going to pretend that we're playing the game of Monopoly, but we're going to be acting as if we are a real estate company, because the game of Monopoly is purchasing real estate and receiving rental income and paying taxes and those types of things. So pretend that we're playing Monopoly, and let's look at the first transaction, which is on September the 1st. It tells us that $1,500 cash investment in owner's equity. So what happens in that transaction is the owner, which in your case would be you, but let's say it's for me, for my company, I would put $1,500 cash in my business, and that is my owner's equity in the business. So I need to record that transaction first in the journal. So I'm going to go over to the journal, and I'm going to record for September the 1st a $1,500 investment of cash into owner's equity. So I know I'm going to have at least 2 accounts are affected in any transaction. In this game, we're only going to have 2 for each different transaction. So I'm going to look and see if I have an account. These are accounts that I could record cash in, and I do. And then I am also going to have some owner's equity. And so here is the owner's equity account. So here's how I would record that transaction. I'm going to go to the general journal page 1. I'm going to enter the date of 9/1 of 20. Then I'm going to determine again what 2 accounts that I'm going to use. Well, we said that I need to use cash, so I'm going to add to cash, and so it has a normal debit balance. So that means I'm going to debit cash when I add to it. So the first account I'm going to use is cash. I'm going to debit the cash for $1,500. Now in accounting, you have double entry, which means you have to have debits that equal credits. So you have at least 2 entries. So we've already talked about it affects cash, and then it was an entry into owner's equity. So I'm going to use that owner's equity account to record the other part of this transaction. If I go back and look at my chart of accounts for my owner's equity, I see here that it has a normal credit balance, which means to add is to credit. So I'm adding to my owner's equity, and that's correct. I'm going to credit this. Now, in accounting, it has to balance. So you have to have, again, the same amount of debits as you do credits. And as you see, we do. So we've debited cash, we've increased cash by $1,500, and we've credited owner's equity. So that's journalizing that first entry. So I also want to then post this entry to the ledger. So now I'm going to go to the first page of the general ledger, and I'm going to show you how to set up your accounts for this specific project. So I'm going to start with the first account that I know we're going to use, and that's going to be the cash account. And I have given you more rows in this account than any other because you have more cash transactions in this project. So I'm going to enter the name here, and then I need to put the account number. So I'm going to go back to that second page, our third page that has our chart of accounts. Here we go. And here's my account number for cash, 101. So I'm going to go back to my general ledger, and I'm going to record that number for my account number. Now I can start recording my first entry, but let me go ahead and set you up with all the accounts you're going to need in the general ledger, and we'll come back and post. So I know we're going to have cash, so I'm going to look at the chart of accounts and go through those accounts I know we're using. We're also going to have property. Property would be next, and that's account number 130. So I'm going to go to that page 1. My next account is property, and it's 130. Then I noticed already my next account that I would use is owner's equity. So I'm going to fill in for my owner's equity. But I don't remember what the account number is. I think it's 301, but let's scroll back. Yes, owner's equity is 301. So I'll go back into my ledger and add that account number. Now let's see what my next one is. And you see that I'm listing them in the order as I'm just going down through these accounts. I know because I wrote this project, so I know which accounts we're going to use, and that's why I'm just kind of scrolling through. We're going to have salary income, which is account number 401. Scroll back to page 2. Salary income. 401. I believe the next one would be rental income. Yes, that's correct, and it's 405. So rental income 405. Okay, let's go back up. We do have some dividend income, and that's account number 410. Okay. And then let's see. We have rent expense, which is 501. I believe we pay income tax expense, which is 505. Okay, and I think I only have one more that we're using. I believe that is the jail fee expense is 545. And I only gave you 3 sheets, so those should be the accounts that we need. Okay, so now I can go back and what I'm doing here, and I'm sorry for scrolling back and forth, but that's the only way I know how to record this for you. We're going to record this first entry. Cash is a debit of $1,500. So let's go to that cash account. I'm going to enter the date was 9/1 of 20. I don't have to put anything here for cash because it's just cash. It was a debit for $1,500. Notice these two are just where to post it, debit or credit. The last two, it just gives us the balance of the account. So currently, we only have a $1,500 debit, so that means our balance is $1,500. Now see this column called post reference? That tells us where did this information come from. So let's scroll back up to the journal and let's look at this page number. So this is the general journal, page 1. If I go there, I see this transaction. So I'm going to call this GJ1. And so I'm going to enter GJ1 in my posting reference. So again, anyone that looks at this account can look back to page GJ1 and they should see this entry. I'm also going to go back to my journal and I'm going to put the account number as the reference as well, so that if someone is looking at this page and they want to know where it was posted, they'll go to account number 101 and they should see this debit of $1,500 on 9/1/20. And so that's what we're going to do for each entry. So let's go ahead and enter for owner's equity. Let's go to that account. So owner's equity, same date was 9/1 of 20. Don't have to put anything there. I do know that this information came from GJ page 1 and it was a credit of $1,500. That's all I have at this time, so the balance is $1,500. The account number is 301, so I'll go back to my general journal page 1 and I'll enter 301 here. And so now we've journalized, recorded it in the journal, and we've posted it to the ledger. So that's all we need to do for this transaction at the moment. I'm going to do one or two more for you to show you how to do that. So that was the first one here. So I'm going to highlight to show that I've already completed it. The next one is September the 2nd, and it's purchased Reading Railroad for $200. So let's go to our journal, and let's skip a line and put 9/2 of 20. We purchased Reading Railroad. So if you've ever played Monopoly, you know that these are properties. So I'm going to look in my asset account, and I'm going to find an account, and it's just calling it property. And so that's where I'm going to enter this information. Now, if I look back here, it tells me to add. Normal balance means to add is to debit. So I am adding. I bought it. It's an asset. It's increasing in value. So I'm going to use the account property. But here's what I usually do. I'm going to put the name of the property here so that I know which property this is referencing. So Reading Railroad. I'm still just going to put it in the property account, but I'll show you in a moment how I do that. So Reading Railroad, I purchased it, so I increased the value of my property by $200. If I purchased the property for $200 in Monopoly, that means I paid cash. So I'm going to go into my cash, I'm going to use my cash, but instead of increasing, if you look back, increasing it is to debit, I need to decrease it. So I'm going to credit cash to decrease it. So let me go ahead and enter my debit to cash, my credit to cash of $200. So again, I have a debit of $200 and a credit of $200. My next step is to go back to the ledger and record these accounts. So let's go to the property account and record $200. So let's scroll to the ledger, property account. The date was 9/2. And here I am going to put a note because this is Reading Railroad, and that just helps me delineate which property that I purchased here. So Reading Railroad. I know that this information came from GJ page 1, General Journal page 1. It was a debit of $200, and that's the only thing I have in here, so my balance is a debit of $200. Now I need to go back to my journal and enter the account number in that reference column, and it was 130. And this just really shows me that I've recorded it in the ledger. It's just a check way that we can look at. And anyone who looks at this can look at account number 130, and they should see the debit of $200 to property. And then let's record cash. So cash is a credit of $200 in this transaction. So we put the date, 9/2. It came from GJ page 1, and it was a credit of $200. So here's the key for correctly entering the information in the balance account. So we had a debit balance prior to that of $1,500, and now we have a credit of $200. So I'm going to subtract my credit from my debit balance. So $1,500 minus $200 means that my balance in my cash account is $1,300 debit. I'm going to go back to my general journal, and I'm going to put in the post reference account 101. And I've recorded that transaction now. So all you're going to do for each one of these transactions is what you've seen me do here. Once you complete all of these transactions, you're going to go to this sheet, and again, it's just a picture, so you'll have to print it out and handwrite it. This is your trial balance. So you would put at the top, let's say this was my company. If it's my company, I would probably call it Hollingsworth Holdings. In the second line, I would put income statement for the month ended September 30th, 2020. And then I'm just going to go into each one of my accounts, and I'm going to enter the name. So for example, I would put cash would be my first account, and I would enter the balance, whatever the balance is, and it should be a debit. And then I would go to the next account, property, and I would put whether it has a debit or credit and enter the amount. Once you have them all entered here, get a total for the debits, get a total for the credits, and they should equal. If they equal, you're in balance, and then you can go to the income statement, which is here. This would be Hollingsworth Holdings, income statement. The other one I may have said income statement. It's the trial balance. So I'm sorry if I said that. It's the trial balance. This is for the month ended September 30th of 2020, and I would look for any account that has the name revenue in it. So for example, it's also going to be income or revenue. So it could be salary income, rental income. I think we have dividend income, and just put the balance at the end of that month. And this is the year 2020, so you just have to put 20 here. Get a total for the revenue accounts, then look at the expense accounts. So